Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the Tuned In podcast, where we focus on the good, the pure, the positive influences and individuals and things that have happened throughout our community. And excited tonight for a well-known face here in not just in East Central Illinois, but Hall of Fame coach John Spezia. Coach, thanks for joining me tonight.
Well, Eric, anytime you can do something that's positive, and I think that's the thing, I think both have agreed. I get so tired of some of the negative publicity that's out there. And anymore, it seems like with social media and everything else, that does come up, and especially the main media. And it's unfortunate, but what you're doing is great. And there is a lot of positives going on. Just unfortunately, that doesn't sell a lot of newspapers or TV advertisements. So
That's for sure.
yeah.
Well, Coach, you got a lot of stuff I really like to talk about, but kind of big project that you're involved in and been working on for a while is the Illiana Sports Hall of Fame. Wonder if you could kind of share a little bit about that.
Well, that was a project of several years ago. We, because I've been a member of the IBCA, the Illinois Basketball Coach Association, and we thought we had the Basketball Museum of Illinois here, because I thought, again, it was a positive situation where people coming to actually come to the arena, and there's an all-star game. So there's a lot of things. Again, goes back exactly what you're talking about, is something that's positive. Media, hey, so-and-so got into the Hall of Fame and it's going to be inducted in Danville. So from there, that didn't go very well. In fact, we're still struggling with a place we thought was in left Danville, went to Pontiac, and that didn't work out. Now they're working on someplace up in Chicago. So I'm still on that board. But the Illiana one, when Joe Dunnigan took over as the new GM at the arena, he said, "Coach, what if we did one, in Vermilion County and in Western Indiana?" For a lot of reasons. He says the history here, a lot of people don't realize. And let's honor those people. So him and Jim Shepard, the old, the former, and he's a Hall of Famer, the voice of the Fighting Line, and former
Sure.
voice of the Fighting Line in football and basketball. And Jim and I sit on the basketball museum board also. So we've got, two guys that are used to it, museum stuff and Hall of Fame stuff. And Shep does some things with the IBCA and their Hall of Fame banquet. So that's how it started. And Joe, so we would meet every Wednesday, and for almost a year, diving into how we're going to do it, what models we're going to use. We use some from the NJCA, we use some from the IBCA, we use some from actually the Greater Sports Hall of Fame in Peoria. We got a lot of the base out of that. And we went and visited, before the COVID hit, we visited the Hall of Fame in Peoria at their arena. And it was, again, let's do positive, of the area. Honor those people. Eventually, we put it into a scholarship form for the banquet, and we got the Lions Club to be involved in it. Bill Wappy's been great with us, and so that's kind of how it started. I mean, we go back all the way to 1900, and I'll share some of that with you, some of the people. And it was a tough, we've missed some people, and we put it out there for people to send us nominations. It was on the website. And we did, I think we did with Channel 3, and we've done stuff with the news and everything else, or the media, newspaper, and emails and Facebook and so forth. And it's like anything else. Our return wasn't real good. And then of course, COVID hit. We couldn't go into the schools, and that was another one where we want to get information from those schools. And what happens there, Eric, because of turnover, younger ADs and principals and so forth, they don't know all the history in their school. And we found that out. So we started doing an investigation on our own. And we went to, and we had to have a category. What are the criteria? And we said, okay, we took a little bit, again, from the Peoria one, the NJCA, the IBCA. So we said, okay, for this first class, if you have been inducted into a Hall of Fame, that's one criteria for you to get in, okay? And with that, if you've won a state championship, could be golf, could be basketball, or could be a national championship, because the Peoria one has college things, and they have ICC and Bradley and Eureka and in the Peoria. So we included Danville community colleges. So that's some of the criteria. Being in the Hall of Fame, win a state championship, could be an individual or it could be a, your team. And we said, okay, it has to be a 10-year moratorium. In other words, let's say there's a kid that from Georgetown that won the state wrestling a year ago.
Mhm.
Well, could we put him in? No, that's most Hall of Fames are not going to do that. They're going to wait and give you a time period. So
Right.
we put that into it. And then we decided also, because that's pretty much a lot of the other, some Hall of Fames, it's longer than that. You got to be, 20 years after you graduate or you quit coaching. But so that was part of the criteria. And we said, okay, so what coverage areas are we going to have? Well, we decided we're going to go just to Oakwood, the Vermilion County line. We won't take in Champaign County. We'll go all the way as far as Chrisman and Tri-County, Shiloh, and we'll go all the way up to Milford. That's kind of the district for DACC. And then we'll go into Western Indiana, go as far as Fountain Central, east, and then go as far south as South Vermilion, and far north as far as Attica, I believe. And so about a 60-mile radius. Now, with that also, that is something for the arena that also gives us media coverage and let people know about things that are going on at the arena in Danville. Right. So, we're twofold. We're going to raise money, honor past coaches, players, teams, have a nice banquet, and make sure that we get the positive media attention that brings people to Danville into the arena. So that was those are 3 steps we looked at when we did it. And we went all the way back. Like I said, we went to all the IHSAs, Indiana, Illinois, and looked back through the track and field, the golf, the basketball, football, who had won championships. And one of them is a guy out of Milford back in, I think, 1912. He won the shot put, the discus in the state of Illinois. And he was the top one nationally in the whole United States. And he later on, 2000 or 1914 or whatever, he got second in the, I think, discus or shot. He got 4th in standing long jump and standing high jump and a standing long jump, and pitched on the USA baseball team.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's cool.
So, yeah. So, that's how far back we went. And there's some other ones that we looked at. The football team from Westville that was undefeated, unscored upon. That one's in. Yep. And we had a Legends one, people that, example like Fowler Cannell, Virgil Sweet, who coached at Westville, but also started the IBCA in Indiana, and was a longtime coach at Valpo High. I think Jim Richards we put in with he's a wrestling coach, and he also officiated, and he had the wrestling association around here. Gene Lash, the official. Max Schaefer with WDN, longtime guy with WDN. I used to listen to Max Schaefer all the time. He did Indiana and Illinois, made sense. And then, of course, player-wise, people like Stephanie White. That played at Seeger and played at Purdue, and that, ironically, in females, there's a Candace Dart. I think she played at Fountain Central. She's at Ohio State, and it's also, I believe, in their training program. So, still working at Ohio State. There's another girl from Attica that again played at Purdue and had a great career at Purdue. Basketball wise, obviously there's several there. Brian Williams, the guy that hit the famous shot for Schlarman against Clinton to beat them, and Brian still holds a Central Holiday tournament record in Centray with 56 points, and he played at He's in the IBC Hall of Fame. He played at St. Louis U and Xavier, and then had a tryout with the Hawks. Um, Here's one. It's a unique one. Is Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis was on the team that got fourth in the state for Schlarman, and Coach Chevy was the coach. Coach Chevy's in it also. I'll get to him in a little bit. But Anthony was like 6'9", 6'10". If you go on, I put some stuff on Facebook. There is some clips of Schlarman when they played. They got fourth place. They got beat by Pinckneyville, and I want to say either was West Aurora or Mount Vernon, one of those teams that ended up winning the state championship. Anyway, Jim Davis played on that team, or Jim Williams played on a team that later coached at Schlarman and coached at Fountain Central and Logansport, and played at Notre Dame. But Davis was, at that time, the lane was real small, 6 feet across, and Davis was dominant defensively, and that's when they could take the ball off the rim. Of course, he caused problems for that, obviously, at 6'9" or 6'10". But the thing with him, he ended up playing some with, I guess, out of high school, under an assumed name, played either the Trotters or one of those touring teams. And then later on, he went to junior college and went to the University of Hawaii, and led him in rebounding and scoring a couple years. Then he got drafted by the New York Knicks, didn't make it at that time. There was a quota thing with the black athletes. And he ended up, was the first black athlete to play professionally in Luxembourg and Germany.
Wow.
And then he's out in San Francisco. I've met him once, and he, in fact, he was in one of the Tarzan movies, ironically, as it may seem. And he also is playing the senior circuit basketball-wise. He was a cable guy out in San Francisco and has done work out there. But that's just, that's the thing about it is, those kind of history, a lot of people know about. His brother Greg got in. Greg Davis played at Danville. Schlarman was a McDonald's All-American and played at Texas El Paso. Oh gosh, and again from Schlarman, Willie Stinson that played at Northwestern. Zeke Burkowski, obviously, obvious one, played with the Packers and played at Georgia. Here's one, Sleepy Klein, played at Schlarman. Long time career in the pros. He was played with the Bears. Played, I can't remember. Ended up playing at the University of Iowa. So I mean, guys like that, their name might be up on a board someplace in Schlarman, or Joe Kurkowski from Westville. I think he placed in the state in the 220, at that time 220-yard dash. Played football at Illinois, and then played with the Redskins and the Raiders.
Yep.
So team-wise, the one Schlarman team that was undefeated football-wise is in it. North Maine girls that won the Class 1A state championship at North Maine. I think the Turkey Run softball team won a softball championship. Let's see. The golf team from Danville High School with Mike Small. He's in it also as a coach. And I think Brett Springer played in that team. I think Berkey might have been the coach at that time. That team's, and there's a tennis team that won the state championship in 1944, I believe. Wow. So, yeah, I mean, an unbelievable amount of history, and other people, Randy Feller, Joe Springer, Terry Hill, the longtime cross-country coach at DAC, just some of the ones, Gene Gorley, Roger Beals. I mean, guys that, your age would remember, maybe not so much the young guys, but, those guys are all in the Hall of Fames and have been very successful. I think Roger Beals won over 600 some games.
Right.
So
it's a really diverse group, Coach. I mean, it wasn't, you being a basketball coach, you're not focused right on basketball. I mean, that brings a ton of history together in one place for people to learn about.
Well, as I grew up, I played football at Bismarck and baseball, and ran track and field. And of course, my family is, Gabe was, and he's in the Hall of Fame. He's He's a Hall of Famer at Eastern Illinois and was an All-American at Eastern and Dan Malary Community College as a hurdler. So I knew a little bit about the track and field stuff. I knew about the football because I played and I'd heard about it. And of course, baseball. I coached baseball, believe it or not, a long time ago at North Judson and at Sheldon. And I knew some of the baseball. The two Fletchers are in it. Tom and Darren. There's a kid out of Attica, Stroll, that was a Big Ten, I think, baseball player of the year or something. And he got as far as AAA. And that kind of stuff. So, and Joe Dunnigan did a great job. And Joe was at the University of Illinois. He's got his master's from, I believe, Michigan State. And he knew some of this stuff. And of course, Shep. He's University of Illinois. He's also done the Hall of Fame stuff with us, the IBCA. So we argued back and forth and over who should be in, who shouldn't be in, and
Sure.
The Modest, Thad, and Greg. Obviously, I had somebody say, "Well, what about Scotty Eels?" We didn't. We also looked at what they did as an athlete, but also what they do afterwards, and that was, you had to break the line someplace.
Sure.
And that's something that was, there's guys that didn't get in that, people say about now. Anthony Jones, the track guy, an unbelievable sprinter from Danville High. It was at Illinois. And there was a female trackster that went to Illinois that's also in it. We've got a couple of cross-country guys that are in it, golfers. We got one. This is I wouldn't say it's funny, but I watched his bio the other day. Now, I don't know what you follow in wrestling, but you ever heard of the Ultimate Warrior?
Yep.
You know where the Ultimate Warrior is from?
No.
The Ultimate Warrior is from Petersburg, Indiana. He played football at Cotton Central for Gary Pate. And it's a long story there. I think people kind of bullied him, and long story short, he's in a couple other Hall of Fames, and he was a bodybuilder, and then he got into wrestling, and he passed away here maybe a year or two ago. But anyway, yeah, the Ultimate Warrior. I'll tell you a funny story about it. We have our national championship teams in the Hall of Fame, and there's a player there by the name of Kevin Johnson. And Kevin, I got Kevin. He was at Creighton, played for Tony Baroni, and one of the assistants was Dick Fick. Him and I had worked together at Valpo, the university. And he called me and says, "Coach, I got a kid. His mom's passed away with cancer. He's not in school. We need to get him back in school." Well, Dad comes willing to visit. He was supposed to visit Kankakee. And Kankakee was really good at that time. I mean, they were, when we played them, they were the number one team in the country. Undefeated, the team that won the national championship. We beat them at our place. But Kevin, Dad came there. I didn't have any scholarships left. And Kevin came and his dad said, "This is where you need to go." And Coach Fick obviously had some influence on it. Now, eventually, Kevin got a scholarship second semester, but ours was only tuition and fees. And the rest is history. He still holds the assist record, and then he ended up playing at Indiana State. And Gene Katie was there to watch him play when we played Kankakee. Well, anyway, long story short, with Kevin, we used to have a meeting every before school started, and they'd go around the table. Eric Jordan, Westville, Illinois, Bill Yeakel from Gibson Southern, Matt Sessie from Heritage Hills. Well, it gets to Kevin Johnson. Now, none of these guys know him, and I don't know him real well, other than what Coach Fick has told me, right? And he jumps up and he says, this is all he says: "The Ultimate Warrior is not dead." Jumps up and says, and sits right down. And the eyes on the rest of our guys they're going like, "Coach, where did you get this guy at?" So it's been a long-standing 30-year joke. In fact, his son played in the national tournament this last year. He's at Iowa Lakes, Drew. And we tell that story all the time. I mean, can you imagine sitting there, some guy, he's from Columbus, he was at Creighton. They kind of knew that, but can you imagine a guy in a meeting, he jumps up because everybody else is going, I'm from Heritage Hills or whatever may be the case. And he jumps up and says, the Ultimate Warrior's not dead.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, it's unbelievable, funny story, but that's the Ultimate Warrior is in our Hall of Fame. So, and I watched the bio on it. It's a pretty good bio. It's on, I think it's on YouTube or one of those. Somebody needs it. James Hellwig is his name. And afterwards he became a speaker and traveling conservative. But it was real interesting, the whole bio. I didn't know all this stuff. I knew he had played at Fountain Central, and he was a little guy in high school when he was a freshman and just grew. I think he ended up probably 6'2", 6'3" before it's all said and done. But guys like that are in it, nobody would know about. We've talked about race car guys, and there's other ones that, we know that eventually they will get into the Hall of Fame. It's, you just can't put everybody in, and you're trying to spread it out. It's all different sports.
Sure.
I think eventually we'll have a banquet next year, the end of June, and we're going to tie in our we had that, if you remember, we had the Battle for the Border. I think you've been involved in it.
Yep.
We'll bring that back. We'll probably have it at the arena, and that'll be a fundraiser along with the banquet. And the Lions Club is going to help sponsor it, and we'll set it up for scholarships eventually, and for kids to go to college. So I mean, like I said, it's great media, positive. You bring back history that people don't even know about or even care about sometimes. But I'm not into the culture of what they call that, cancel culture. That's not. Right. That's no. We're the other opposite. We're saying, hey, these people deserve that somebody needs to mention them and honor them, and and that's what it was about.
I think what's so cool about that, Coach, is that, this has been a very weird year and a half for everybody, let alone, the sport community. My time getting to work around the high school, doing the radio announcing for Newhoff for high school basketball. And obviously you're in very deep, but such a weird year where people are really, I think, like getting disconnected from things and not being able to watch it in person and just seeing the kids suffer. But yet you guys are working to pull that stuff through. But how do you think all this has affected kids, even at younger levels, let alone the collegiate level?
Of course, I'm still at Los Alettes. This will next year be my 4th year, and it was, of course, they're a boarding school. So, in the original thing when they started all this, of course, in Indiana, you go across the border, the rules are almost completely different, right? And they came out, yeah, we're going to do it, but everybody's got to wear masks. And I said, wait a minute, our guys are, they're at boarding school. They're not wearing masks there. We haven't had any COVID. We haven't had any problems. Why do we want to go do that and then bring people to our campus? So, we declined to do any of that stuff. Now we did eventually, I think we like everybody else, started to go across the border and play. We went to Terre Haute and did some of that, but we didn't have anybody. Eventually, I think as time went on in January, when things lightened up, we did play a couple of homeschool teams and Arthur Christian, those guys on campus, but they're in the same philosophy we are. So it worked out very well. Was I disappointed in that? Yeah, because I'd watch games, and some of the games the players didn't have the mask on. They had it underneath their chin. It got to be, just didn't make any sense logic wise. Do I think that the COVID was real? Yes. Do I believe that there was those things going on? Do I think it was somewhat political? Yes. And it's unfortunate that I don't want to get into a whole discussion about it, but it really hurt some of those kids. And we had a great grandson was here that we did virtual. He played all the time. He's a 5th grader, and I can only imagine I'm years old sitting in front of a computer trying to do all this stuff, and we're on top of him all the time, every day. And here's a kid that basically was playing youth football, wrestling, and I saw him pick up weight. I saw his behavior change. It just, and I'm sure there was others like that, not just ours. And I mean, he was very fortunate because he was with us all the time,
Right.
and he did all right at times. But when the bad weather hit, I think it became even tougher because there wasn't, we did all kinds of things. I had to put a little basketball thing in the house you could shoot on, and we did other kind of stuff for him. And then a lot of times we'd go and throw the football around with him. I just think, uh, no state tournament series now. Baseball and softball, no longer get the chance to do that. I'm glad those kids got to go back and do that. I'll tell you that I think mentally. I think it really took. I remember I had a kid out of not East Peoria, but over in the Peoria area. His grandmother used to be the principal at grade school principal at Milford, Mary Rona, and she called me about it. So we had worked him out. I got a Zoom so he could get some exposure. Well, she told me, when they couldn't play, I mean, he was just devastated. I mean, he was lethargic. I think some depression set in, et cetera, et cetera. Well, then when he started playing across the border, and I knew in January after inauguration things were going to change, and they did, and he got back playing. So he was a totally different type of person. Now he's going to go to Knox College, I believe. So yeah, did it affect him? Absolutely. I don't think. And now the other part of this is what people don't realize is that it, at the college level, and it's really affected the high school guys from a recruiting standpoint. That now, you got these guys in the portal. You had like 1,500 guys in the portal in college, and guys are bouncing around, going from one place to the other, or they can stay if they're COVID. We got some college guys. They'll be at the junior college 3 years, eligibility wise, playing wise.
Right.
And so now that takes away from a high school or international kid. I usually have a I wouldn't say easy, but I get a lot of kids placed because I know people at the collegiate level. It's been a tough time. Manny Garcia played for us, good player, could play at a lot of different levels. It just, he's international and he's a high school kid. It's tough. We think he's going to end up playing at the Bronx Community College eventually, but I talk to more and more coaches, and guys call me and I go, look, they're just going to be tough. If you're, less than 6'5", good luck, because they're stacking up with guys, and guys are waiting to see what happens. They're waiting to see who's leaving out of the portal, who's still available.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you see, I don't know how many people know this, but Williams and Fraser, they don't count against Illinois' scholarship count. And those guys are coming back.
Right.
So that has caused a huge problem.
Sure. Coach, how do you think, really, I'm closer to some of the high school activity, but how do you think it is for some of these high school coaches now that have to get these kids to re-engage, really, maybe after kind of checking out a little bit, and get them back into sync and back in line with where the program's going? And where I think the kids have really been robbed. That may have been the one thing that really kept them interested in school and wanting to come to school and participate. And then they have that taken away from them. But how do you work them back into that?
Well, I think what has happened, maybe somewhat on a positive note, and we in the United States take high school sports for granted, and in some ways that was taken away. I'm not saying that's a great thing, but I think what it showed, and it should show to all of us, like professional sports, it's not essential. But it is in some ways, yes, because it motivates kids to look forward to going to school. And, it is it's what I call a boundary. So in other words, hey, Joey, if you don't make C's or whatever it is, or whatever may be the case, you can't play. And they all want to play. So that was taken away from him. And of course, I just said about the Derry kid, because he's a decent student, is that I think once they found out, hey, that I miss that, and it's a great privilege to play. I think it engaged some. Now, do I think the conditioning and all that was in basketball? I think it was awful because you just didn't have that conditioning like you should have, and I saw a lot of bad basketball, as you
Mhm.
probably did too.
Yep.
Um, and it's gotten a little bit better, even the AU stuff, but it did get guys now saying, you know what, I miss it. I really want to engage and do more. Now I know with our guys, they're fired up. I mean, they're doing extra workouts. They're doing what they're doing. We just let them go off to. They leave tomorrow, go back home. So they're all excited about the next year because they won a season, and I think from that standpoint, it has maybe engaged them to do a little bit extra on their own. And in high school sports, I think, like I said, and I tell kids all the time, I go, I've been all over the world, and I said when I go down to the Caribbean, a lot of those guys they're playing. They don't have an indoor court. They're playing outside and they're playing on the asphalt. And I can tell you that it isn't 75 degrees. It's 80 or 90.
Right.
So yeah, and they don't have the weight rooms like we have. We have a very nice weight room at Lost Up. Milford has a fantastic one. I know Westville's now maybe has some of the best facilities in all of Maine County.
Yep.
So we've taken that for granted, and I think now we need to go back, and I see different programs are engaging, making sure they have weight training or strength conditioning, speed training in their PE classes. Milford did it a long time ago, just before I got there, and that's a credit to Doc Hastings and Steve Tetherow. And if you've watched Milford Athletics there for a while, Milford Athletics wasn't very good, and now the last 10 years, all their sports have been pretty good. They have full-time guys doing conditioning and strength training. Their volleyball's been good. Their basketball's been good. That 8-man football
Sure.
won a state championship. A baseball team just won a regional. So I mean, they got it going, and those kids are very active, and educationally they've done a pretty good job. So I think once everybody now realizes we got that taken away from us, we understand now that it is a privilege and honor, and so they'll step up and do a little bit more. And I think that's the key. And I always tell guys who are going to college that you may think you're the best player in this area, but I can tell you there's thousands and thousands of players, and it's not just here; it's overseas. I get calls all the time about guys overseas wanting that opportunity, and I'll give you one. A kid that played for me, Alex Portwood, hard work, probably one of the hardest working high school kids I've had. His dad had played for me when I was at Sheldon, and Alex worked his fan. If he'd stay extra, did the weight room, did all the things. And he goes and plays at Lincoln Land Community College for a former player of mine, Chad Jones. And so we got talking about it was after he got to college, come back, and he says, Coach, he says, I only know what I was getting. And I tried to tell him about the college, so what he was getting himself into. If I only knew what I know now, I would work even harder. I said, Alex, there's not too many high school kids who worked as hard as you did. But that's what the unknown is. And unfortunately, sometimes parents and fans, everybody else, fill some kids' ear with it. The ones that get there are the ones that don't listen to that, and they have that, what I call that passion, they'll get in the morning and come in and shoot at 6 o'clock or 6:30 and lift or whatever may be the case. And it's not just basketball; it could be baseball, it could be soccer, it could be any of that stuff. You give me a kid that's got passion and desire, he or she is going to be pretty good. Athleticism only goes so far,
Right.
and I think that's what I see in some of these kids. And this area, from a female standpoint, look at all the Division I girl basketball players, that hasn't happened maybe never. I mean, we might have here and there now. 20 years ago, you had a lot of boys from based in Watsika to Paris that were Division I players. You know,
Right.
they go back to Lyndon Swanson, Scotty O's, Thad Matas, you know, the Otho Tuckers and the Rick Schmitz and all those guys. But that hasn't been the case in boys basketball, and even
You see,
football. Now you got a
you've seen a
couple.
lot of changes in the game, though, Coach, over the years. And not to sound kind of like the grumpy old guy, you know, like that's not how it was back in my day, but the game's really changed. The game has changed a lot, really, how it's played, you know, from many
Well,
years ago to the way it is now, right?
well, I think in some ways, yes and no. I think fundamentals kind of went out the window a little bit, and that goes back to you guys just want to play games, and when you do that, then you're not working on fundamentals. You're not working on, you know, footwork and all things. And I'm not the only one saying that. That's pretty much well known all over the world. And at one time, I think we were, especially in the Midwest, Indiana coaches and the Illinois high school coaches, you know, their job's on the line. They're going to make sure those guys are doing what they're supposed to do. And now it's the AU stuff. If, you know, I go play 3 games or 4 games, and if I get beat, it's not a big deal. You know, before when you played on the outdoor court, you get beat, you not play again for a little while. I mean, that's just how the tenacity of it is. And it was a big deal of winning and losing. I think there's more access now to weight training and the conditioning part. You have more access, and I tell kids all the time, YouTube channel, you can find any kind of, you know, I just had this thing with kids we had today. You go YouTube and shoot all kinds of shooting drills, how you should do it right, or post moves, or whatever may be the case. I said, I got one word for you, and it's LAZY. I mean, you got it access there. Back then, there wasn't that many people were teaching the game, and you know, I can remember looking at garage door basketball pictures and stuff of how you should shoot the ball properly. Or maybe you watched the high school game. I used to watch Indiana and Illinois state tournament play. I'd watch, you know, the Lafayette or the Indianapolis sectional and the regionals, all that, and same in Illinois. The kids have so much access to stuff, and I think the training has gotten better from that standpoint. You know, Westville's going to have a new weight room. I can tell you, lost that we have a full-time strength conditioning guy, by the 6 going all the way to do that. I can tell the difference in our guys just this year. And in 3 or 4 years, you know, St. Joe did that. And I used to tell people, you know, why St. Joe? St. Joe, they said, well, Coach, you know, they got guys come from Champaign, social, economical. Well, you know, I don't believe all that stuff. I mean, that's just more excuses. They got weight training. Their weight training was during their, you know, their PE period, just like what Milford's done. And you go across the border, you can count that. Yeah, I went into because I used to do shooting camp at Ben Davis High School. Now Ben Davis is a large high school, bigger than probably twice the size of Danville High School. Their weight room was as big as Westville High School's gym.
Wow.
Maybe a little bigger. And they had a full-time strength and conditioning guy. Now then, they'd won state championship, girls basketball, boys basketball, football, you name it. So I think those are things they're a difference from what you're saying before. You know, I can remember you talk about strength training. There wasn't much of that going on at Bismarck at the time. My strength training was my dad said, hey, you know, see those bales out there? You got to go buck those bales. You can go buck those bales, or you can pick milk cartons and about 18 milk cartons and lift them above your head and do that. That's your strength conditioning stuff. So, or you can go out there and cut those thistle out of that bean field. So that's changed now. And I think, you know, obviously the better part of it, I think, for most people. But yeah, the game, the 3-point line has changed some things, I think. I think that's a filter down to a certain extent. I think is there better shooters? I don't know. I watched the 1953 state championship game. There was no 3-point arc, and I saw guys, you know, raise up off of 1 foot and shoot shots just that far. And they were pretty accurate, maybe not as accurate as they are now. But I think the arc has changed some things. Now the shot clock in the college levels changed some things.
What about at the high school, Coach? I've heard that off and on for years, really, that was a thing. And what's your thoughts on that for high school?
Darrell Robinson sits on that. Darrell, played for me, and of course he played college basketball from here at Danville, and then just went on. But I know why they want to do it, because they want to. If you got athletes, you're going to speed up the tempo of the game. You can't control it, and I think at the 1A and 2A levels, I think it and for the ladies, I think it's a problem. And this is why I say that. And this comes from a guy named Dick Bennett. And we did a lot of things defense. Coach Mills has taken some of that stuff when he was at Westville. And he went from denying the basketball and doing all that stuff when he was at Wisconsin, Green Bay, and then eventually Wisconsin. And I said, Coach Bennett, why have you gone away from all that stuff? Denying the ball and pressure. I said, Coach, with the clock, we think if we do the pack, and if you remember, Virginia won the national championship here a couple of years ago. His son is at Virginia, and you've seen a lot of teams, even Rick Pitino's playing zone, and some of those guys are packing the ball into the lane. What they feel is that with the pack, I'll put wherever the ball's at, I'll put pressure, but we're going to pack everything in the lane. We're not going to let you penetrate, throw the ball into the middle, and you're not going to drive into the lane. And you're going to have to pass the ball around. Eventually, you got to take a shot. Now, is that going to be a good shot, bad shot, and with pressure? And I think there's not enough good shooters at the 1 and 2A level that the game could get really ugly. And you're going to see more people probably play zone or pack it inside, make it, they'll put, and sometimes at the 1 and 2A level, maybe you got just two good shooters, or they can play triangle and two and take your shooters out. This happened a couple of years ago. We're playing Watsika for the holiday championships, and I had a big kid, 6'11" kid, and what we did, they had two shooters. They were shooting lights out. All we did is we put one of our better defensive players on one, the other on the other one. Those guys didn't even. I think one of them scored one bucket in the second half. Now, and we just shut them down completely. So what happens if you have a clock? Now you got to shoot it in whatever it is, 45 seconds or whatever may be the case, or 30 seconds. I mean, we went from the college level from 45 to 35. Now I think it's 30. And when I've coached overseas, it's 24 with the FIBA rules. So, if you got athletes and you can do that, yeah, but eventually you watch those guys, they eventually pack it inside. And guys, really create some problems. So I don't know. I have mixed emotions about it. I know there's some states doing it. I don't know quite the percentage they're doing it. And I hear guys, well, it's getting ready to play college. And I see some of the FIBA back, when I was overseas, some of those lower levels playing the shot clock. And I think at the college level, yeah, maybe. Because you got to remember, a lot the college level and the high school level, or excuse me, the pro level, that is about entertainment. You got people coming to the facility, you watch on TV. They don't want somebody to stand out and hold the basketball for 2 minutes, kind of like Hoosiers or Milan, where he holds the ball. And I mean, let's face it, there's a shot clock. Milan, we'd never heard about Milan. Or, in those cases. And I just think you take an equalizer away from a team maybe not as talented or smaller that can handle the basketball.
Right.
So I think you want everybody to be the same, and I've got the best athletes, or I can cheat and get the best athletes, whatever may be the case. And not a lot of coaching is going into this. Say, well, it's more fun for the kids. Well, okay, then let your guys come in and not make any passes and jack up threes to see how long that lasts.
Right.
Not very long, because then it comes into selfishness. So, like I said, I got mixed emotions about it, especially at the 1 and 2A level.
We're talking tonight with Coach John Spezia, NJCAA Hall of Famer, BACC Hall of Fame. Coach, reading through that list a little bit, there's some names there, to be honest with you, I don't recognize, but you mentioned Terry Hill earlier. What a great guy Terry is, and get to work with him out at the national tournament every year. Coordinating the PA announcing. That's another one of those positive things that really goes on in Danville, Vermilion County. But you're a big part of that too every year, Coach.
Well, it started. I'll give you a little bit of background history for your followers.
What does your TV say?
Hold just a minute, Eric. Can you stop just for a minute? I got to answer this question for my great grandson real quick. It just says, "I'm sorry."
Good.
Okay, going back to NJCA now. All right. I don't know if you remember. You may be a little bit too young, but back in the 70s, we used to hold because there's one region. Now it's two regions in the state of Illinois, Region 4 and Region 24. Well, it used to be all Region 4. And the state tournament used to be held at Danville. I think Joe Springer was involved in it and the rest of them. But I remember when I was at Valpo as a recruiter that I used to come watch the state tournament, or it would be the junior college state tournament. I remember watching, from Belleville, ended up coaching at Purdue, played at Purdue. Kevin Stallings at LSU.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it came from. Then when I took the job back in '83, we were all one class. There was no three divisions, Division 1, Division 2, and Division 3. And we were at that time we ended up eventually getting scholarships and we got to be very competitive. We won at that time a sectional, got all the way to the championship of the regional to go out to Hutch, because that's where the national tournament was. Well, about that time, there was a movement to bring in another division. And the reason the movement came in is because in the region that Vincennes was in was all of Michigan. There's only one junior college in Indiana at the time. That was Vincennes. If you know anything about Vincennes, they're the largest dormitory junior college in the country. Their facilities as nice as Eastern's, and I could go on, yada yada. And they've won a national championship, and they had Ricky Green and Bob McAdoo and all those guys.
Hey.
And
where's your remote?
Sorry.
No. Good.
Okay, so we're going back to what happened. The Michigan one, the guy out of Delta, Michigan, said, "Let's," he was on the NJCA, one of the boards, and said, "We need to go to two." So that's what happened. Well, one of the first teams from our area that went to play Division II was Parkland, and they won the national championship. And the coach was Tom Cooper. Tom and I had many battles. Was a great coach. Great strategy guy. One of the first guys really pushed three-point shooting, changing defenses and all that stuff. Anyway, so him and I would argue about this. We were still Division I, and we were very successful at it in the top 4 Division I junior colleges in our region. And eventually, he said, "Coach, you need to really look at this." I said, "All right, Tom, I want to look at it." So I did. So I went to Dr. Brown, and I said, "Dr. Brown," he had been there a couple of years. I said, "Dr. Brown, here's the deal. John A. Logan, Wabash Valley, they got more money than we got. Those guys were getting full rides, et cetera, et cetera." He had been at Rend Lake. I said, "And we've been successful." I said, "But for us to get to Hutch or to get past these guys, we're going to have full rides and stuff." I said, "The college has got to do something. We don't have dorms. We got guys in apartments." And "Well, Coach, I don't think I can give you any more money." And I said, "If that's the case, then maybe we need to be a big fish in a little pond. Maybe we need to go to Division II." "Oh, no, we want to do that." I wasn't totally fired up about going Division II. Now, cross country, it wasn't Division II, or we eventually did. But I kept researching, doing so finally I convinced him, and that's what he did. He said, "Okay, you can go to Division II. What do you got to do different?" Well, we couldn't give them books at that time, so we had to take the books away from them. And our players agreed. Now we had one housing scholarship. excuse me. And so the kids had to give that up because I talked to them. I said, look, we have a chance. We could win a national championship. Or, I mean, he said, Coach, are we going to play the same schedule? I said, absolutely. Because we weren't in a conference. You know, we played Indian Hills, Southeastern Iowa and all those guys, Three Rivers. And we didn't change the schedule. And lo and behold, that's, you know, we go and win it. And then the next year we get seventh, and the AD at Delta at that time says, I'm going to retire. That's when I proposed that to Dick Shockey and Jack Sestriano. And Jay Harrington is a very close friend of mine. Jay was the president of the basketball coach and the region director. Well, despite what anybody in Vermilion County thinks, Jay Harrington had a lot to say about us going Division II and to get to the national tournament, because he was the president of the Coaches Association. He was the head of, I don't know, it was with USA Basketball. He had some clout to get it changed, and eventually that's we did. We put a bid in for it. We had a meeting. I asked Dick. I said, Dick, I can't do all this stuff. Being the AD, we've got to add an extra sports and then run a national tournament. Because if you remember right, back then we had the Topper Classic.
Yep.
You know, and at that time it was going great. I mean, you know, we had King, Manual. I mean, we had packed houses, and we also had the region. Then eventually we got the region tournament. I said, I can't. It's impossible for me to coach, have 12, 13 sports, and do all the stuff we're going to do. So Dick, who had been an AD before and a high school coach, decided, hey, I'll be the tournament manager. You help out, and you know, so all the things that happened at those tournaments, gave that information to Dick, and you know, from Jim Bain, who had done stuff for us. He'd officiate different games for us when we played down at Vincennes. So it was a combination of a lot of things like that. With Jack Sestriano, Jay Harrington, and at that time, Wayne Baker, who was assistant executive director of the NJCA, because I was the assistant region director. So, you know how this goes, committee meetings and so forth. You know those guys, and going to those meetings like I did, that got us in. And I think Bob Jones, the city was all for that. And I think we had 8 teams. Jim McCarthy and my nephew Mike put money into the tournament. And I think I gave up a Pepsi account. That's how it started. And, you know, it's always just grown since that time. And I think, and we've kept a great relationship with the NJCA. Tom McDonald, eventually I got him to be the executive director for the Coaches Association. And Tom is, anytime they've had meetings, you know, about the bid and so forth, Tom and at that time, no time was I, when I was as a assistant region director, and also I was head of Division II basketball. Nobody ever bid against us, but
Really?
they weren't going to, because I was there and Jay was there. It never did happen. When I got retired, then things started to change. And but Tom was very good about it. He was sent on the championship events committee, and he just knows it's going to stay in Danville. I mean, it wasn't anybody doing presentation. He was in charge of that. He made sure, hey, we're not leaving Danville. We're going to go. And Lincoln Land had more money, put up more money to get it. And then Brown Mackey out in Kansas. Again, Rod and Tom had a lot to do with that. Francis was a good friend of mine, and they all knew Francis, but they weren't going to take it and have, you know, the travel and everything else and move it. It just wasn't logistically. They had maybe an arena, but logistically it wasn't going to be what it should be. So, you know, that's why it's stayed in Danville for 25 years. And it's all those things behind the scene, and a lot of people involved and volunteers and so forth. So we thought at the time it'd be great for it's like the basketball museum or the Hall of Fame stuff. It's positive. Bring people in the arena. I've lately been, and I don't mean this politically, but I've been a big proponent of let's build a multiplex. You know, 4 or 5 basketball courts, volleyball courts, if you go to Indianapolis or any of those places, they're
Sure.
playing all the time. Our kids go over and play in Lafayette Legacy courts, 4 courts.
Yep.
I mean, it's unbelievable. And there is no multiplex between Indianapolis and Peoria or Springfield. Now, Rantoul's done their deal,
Right.
but that's all outdoor stuff. If we could jump on the bandwagon and put up a multiplex, and there's been talk about with the mayor and Dr. Knack on some other people, that if we could do that, and we need some at the college, we only got one gym. We need a multiplex to take care of that problem, take care of the weight room and batting cages, and brings revenue to the city. I mean,
Sure.
the youth sports, go to some, we have youth wrestling at the arena. I guarantee you that there'll be 3,000 people there.
For sure. Yep. Coach, we're getting down to the end here. One thing I really wanted to ask you was, we got about 5 minutes left or so, but
Okay.
one thing I really wanted to ask you, Coach, was somebody that's considering getting into coaching, or some of these guys that are just, fresh out of school and taking on freshman teams or whatever, what kind of advice would you give to them to help them get started?
Well, I think first, and I did this when I dumped into it, like youth stuff, but when I was in college, I put out a thing that I wanted to be at a camp, and at one time I think I even did a little basketball camp with Stu Hamill, who used to be at Westville. Then later on North Chestnut, I ended up going to North Chestnut because of that relationship. But I went and did a summer basketball all summer my junior year of college out in Oneonta. And back that time there wasn't camps like there's Illinois and all that. You didn't have any of that. So I got to coach the kids, and I had my baseball and basketball, basically basketball. I was in charge of all the basketball. And the point I'm going to make with young coaches, and not only that, but with any other job, go volunteer and see if that's what you want to do. Go with somebody, go find a coach and volunteer, and maybe be a volunteer assistant, or take a youth team and try and see how you feel about it. And I had been around athletics. I wanted to be a veterinarian or an accountant. Of course, love the animals, but in farming, we had a farm. The passion came with, because I had nephews growing up and I would work with them. So that's how it kind of started. That's what I'm telling with the young coaches. And then there's all kinds of things now. There's coaching clinics, but even coaching clinics, I've said this to guys, the best thing is to find somebody, a mentor with them, and see what he's doing. And then, I used to, even when I wasn't a head coach, I did all kind of basketball camps. I worked at Illinois for 18 years. Indiana camp with Coach Knight, Marquette. I did stuff with Al McGuire, the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, I had, and you had bench coaching, and you had to teach. You had to do the drills and teach kids, and then go watch. I used to go watch, and I still do, go watch other coaches. I mean, we used to go. Coach Groy and I went to watch the Pacers practice, or watch University of Indianapolis, or watch Illinois practice, or Wisconsin, or where it may be the case. And those are, so I think A, volunteer and go do something. B, go to a practice, watch practice. Find somebody you want to be with and talk to them, somebody successful. I think that's the best information I can give. And then there's so much on YouTube, but it really takes coaches, and I say this all the time, assistant, you can be every assistant in the world. I don't care if it's football, basketball, whatever it is. They all think they can be the head coach and do that. Well, they should. I mean that. But there are some guys that are very content just to be an assistant. But the distance between that next step or the bench, that big chair, is the Grand Canyon, because now you got to run practice, you got to your philosophy, you've got to do all those things, and you got to make decisions, and that's a big one. And then you got to make in decisions that you got to make, and I think that's experience. I think it takes 5 years for a guy, once he becomes a head coach, to do all the things, not manage the game, and all that. And finally, you put all your philosophy and all that stuff. And I've watched them for years myself, coaches around this area, and you can just see them growing at different things they're going to do.
Yep.
So that'd be my advice.
Well, Coach, that's going to wrap it up for tonight, but I want to thank you for the time you spent around my kids personally, that, all my kids have benefited from working with you at one point or another, and what you've done for the community. It's a treasure to have you around, and I really appreciate you taking time to talk with me tonight.
Well, Eric, anytime I can help you, I mean, you've been good to us. I mean, you've done announcing for us, done some clock stuff for us when we ran the CBA team and some of the other stuff. We're not done, Eric, because we got some other plans coming up. We need to get you down to La Salette, and I've talked to WITY. We're looking to try to see if WITY will come in and not take anything from WDN, but talked to Gary Hacker. We hope they're going to get some games down at La Salette, because truly that is unbelievable experience. I don't even know how I can explain it. The Coliseum Crazies, it's like old time basketball that you watch back in the 50s and 60s. And it's an unbelievable environment.
Really cool. Coach, I appreciate it.
Okay. Hey, thank you, everyone.
Take good
If I
care.
can help any of the young kids with coaches, or just let me know. You got my information.
Yep. Thanks, Coach. Have a good night.
All right, you too. Thanks, Eric.